Good morning. Good morning. It's so great to see all of you. Thank you so much for joining this meeting. It is an honor to introduce the Tuscarora Historical and Preservation Society, who are great partners with Communidad de Durham. And we've been working on workshops and educational opportunities and also bonding opportunities. And so I do want to allow space for proper introductions, which is the custom for our peoples to do the introductions that kind of settle the place. And so, in whatever ways you want to settle in for this meeting, whether that's breathing, praying, people of this land who will lead us within.
I don't mind starting off. Wakanahorates nagayas tuaskene, wakachineti kanagitre, disne wakachineti hane ganet witret neque, Donnie giate, rothnawa gebak senehelme, chuk nagegisisete, skaroret diwagat fnukne. Maxten waknene, disne the gatgut negu and gines karura ganes hath no agarakwe. Welcome. Uh, Thank you all for being here. I am glad to be here. I'm glad that you are here also. I hope that you are all at peace. Um, my name is Donnie. I come from the Tuscarora Nation of North Carolina. I come from Beaver Clan. He is a current in the swamp. And I'm very glad to be here as part of a collaboration with Communidad de Durham. They're very welcoming to Durham County. I've learned a lot. Um, and I'll pass it off to Runa Kwache to give a quick proper introduction before we get started. Thank you for allowing me opportunity to be here in this space. Yama.
No, pogacnetia ton ginigire. Dwayne Bravo Giathe disne uchat runagwache axena hello and disne scarore divagafnutne disne uji regisa sete disne rudatske wakne ne uchata rabkogia noagaragwe. Gene ha yekisod gehatnek ha gewadocentre disne Wagachnetiat genigire disne niqueth whitre. My English name is Dwayne Brayboy. My Tuscarora name is Runagwache. Medicine lays with him. And I stay in Hickory, but I'm from Robeson County, where the Tuscaroras are. And I'm Bear Clan. And I am glad to be here and to meet you all. Glad that you're all here too.
Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you, Donnie. And I'm going to do my proper introduction. As I mentioned, my name is Alexandra Valladares, and I mentioned the roles that I have in Durham, but my proper introduction would be honoring my people and who my people are. And my people are from Honduras, different parts of Honduras, actually. I was born in Tegucigalpa. My family, Comayagua, Olancho. I have family in Choloma and many parts of Honduras. And so my people are Mayan and they're also Lenca. And my people are people who move, are people who are in tune with the land and people who have, my ancestors didn't have restrictions across Turtle Island. And so there's beautiful collaborations in terms of sharing of stories and sharing of corn and sharing of so many beautiful things that keep us healthy and keep us well and keep us alive. And so um, I bring that into this space because the current situation is more restrictive than it's ever been. And so it's so important to kind of bring in the spirit of our people into the space, bring in the love of landscape, land, um, the love of abundance and in relationships and how we relate to one another. And so it's an honor to collaborate with the Tuscarora Nation, who I learned years ago when I was doing advocacy. I learned about the Tuscarora's history and the deep history they have with North Carolina. And it has been an honor to talk to the so-called immigrant those terms that displace us or kind of show us as though we're new to this land, but don't really tell the full story of how we are connected in more ways than we know, and that we want to know about. And that's why we're doing this session about connection to environmental topics and themes through storytelling, through honoring the people of this land. And so we do have a presentation, a PowerPoint slide.
Do you need a co-host? Oh, no, you got it. Awesome.
And Donnie, would you like for me to would you like to tell me when to move slides if you want to start with
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So we wanted to get together just something very small, not too informal and informative, just about our position on this particular situation. Durham Environmental Coalitions should be coalitions there. Sorry about connections. This is a presentation collaborated through Communidad de Durham and Tuscarora Historical and Preservation Society. So there on the front we have our seal for our society. Communidad de Durham's in there as well in a few slides. And just a little reference to Ellerby Creek watershed so that folks can understand that we're talking about Durham County, the water, the land, and there's a small outline of the county there in years past. All right, Alexandra, you can feel free to speak on this one if you'd like. If not, I can take it away.
yes, take it away. Most folks here have heard a little bit of different connections that I have with many of the folks here in this call.
Right. So everybody's familiar with Alexandra, of course. And for myself, as part of this collaboration, I am the Public Relations Officer of the Tuscarora Nation of North Carolina, as well as the co-chair of the Tuscarora Historical and Preservation Society. A lot of the work that we've done in the last year or so since we've started our society is surrounding conservation and preservation, cultural revitalization, sustainability and stewardship. We have worked with the Center of Biological Diversity on the Save the Red Wolves with the Wildlife Grant. The North Carolina Department of Transportation, the Federal Highway Administration put together a $25 million award for that grant after $4 million was raised by the public and private sponsors to create an establishment for wildlife crossings across North Carolina's ancestral land base where these red wolves have always lived. A large part of that is Tuscarora land base. Runakwache, who's on the line as well, helped with naming many of those red wolves that are in the wild across our ancestral lands. As well as I have an Indigenous Conservation Collaboration Certificate from Arizona State University. So that's just a little bit more about myself. We can move to the next slide. So a lot of what Alexandra and I have been melding together as far as our relationship of interpreting Native philosophies on seeing the world, our worldviews, diplomacy, shared land use, history. So when she mentioned that, there's these terms like migrants versus terms such as original peoples that we use across Turtle Island to see one another, to relate to one another, the land, which is Turtle Island. So when we hear Americas, we think of North and South and Central America, but when we're talking from a Native perspective, an Indigenous perspective, we tend to say Turtle Island, and not really North and South Turtle Island, but just Turtle Island and original peoples. And so we as Tuscarora and most oftentimes other Native people like Maya Lenka, we often see each other in terms of sharing the land. So there were no harsh official strict borders for Native people as you would think for permanent land-based systems that we see today in modern times. So when we say that Native people were free to migrate across the continent roughly without force of resistance, that was largely true to a certain degree, that Native folks had the ability to share the land and its resources. Sure, there was some warfare and some certain particular instances of diplomacy and fixing those relationships when it comes to those boundaries of territory that are shared. But these two road teachings are ways that our people as Tuscarora utilize diplomacy as a tool to create peace and avenues of stewardship with other folks like Myalenka. So separate governing systems. We don't force our system of believing on others. Non-interference, so we don't attempt to assimilate or colonize others into our belief systems. They're welcome to keep those and find, ways to help each other from those systems. Shared responsibilities for future generations and protecting sustainability for all life in creation. So the water is precious and is connected to all life, not just the rain and the lakes, but also the fish that swim it, also the microscopic plankton and different species of creation that live there, that are thriving, that are necessary. Beavers, for instance, they have a role in society, not just in their own family and species and maintaining that, but also ecological and biological diversity and storm retention, water retention. So when we think about ways that Native people interacted, it wasn't always just constant warfare as we're seeing in the colonial depictions from what's supposed to be major historians. We see connections, we see relationships. There are notices of Tuscarora exchanges in cultural and diplomatic institutions with Mayan and Aztec and other belief systems and peoples in the south of Central America and what we call South Turtle Island. The corn there, we see that there is some genetic kinship between our corn and varieties of heirloom corn, Ganahagera, as well as when we talk about belief systems, there were things that exchanged over those we call boundaries. So Tuscaroras and different Haudenosaunee families learned how to grow different agriculture. We learned about the cosmos and we learned about other things that they could teach us from their region, as well as we exchanged diplomatic tools of peacemaking and ways to maintain relationships as far as polishing the silver and having shared stewardship. So that's just to talk about more. There in the first line, 2 vessels, 1 river, and peace and diplomacy. These are demonstrations, actions of our belief system. So the 2 rows there showing the 2 bands, the purple bands, are the colonial European construct as well as the Haudenosaunee or Tuscarora belief systems being separated. As well as being indicative of a river system, so water being tied and rooted to our belief system. Get out of here, get out of here. Get out of here.
Yes, and I will talk a little bit about how this is important, especially for the Durham community, because we have to embrace our indigenous wisdom that is here, that is present here. We always talk about the stewardship from indigenous peoples and how they used to, and it's past tense that we're using, and we know that there's so many tribes in North Carolina, and there's a history of tribes, but one of the important benefits that we have is to talk to tribes that have been here for thousands of years. And that is the case with the Tuscarora Nation. They are original peoples. They do speak to even before North and South Carolina, um, before they split up, because there was a time when it was Carolina and it wasn't North and South. And if you do a little bit of research about the land that we're on, you will see the role that the Tuscarora Nation played, even during those times when it was before it became North and South, and leading up until the Tuscarora Wars that happened in the 1700s, 1711. I will leave it to Dwayne and Donnie to tell you more about the history of the Tuscarora Nation, but I've been learning so much. And for me, it just means about honoring the interconnectedness of spirit and community and land, ways that we are all a part of the story that is being written about Durham and beyond, and especially connecting our urban centers with rural centers. And that connection has also been researched in terms of wealth. So even as we're here in Durham, we're not in a silo. We are a part of land that didn't have boundaries. There wasn't in the Durham. There was a time when Durham wasn't Durham. What was it? Who was on this land? One of the beautiful benefits has been hearing about this area of confluence. We talk about Durham as a place for the Black Wall Street, and that is a historical, very important, significant factor to share, that Durham held and was able to sustain a Black Wall Street up until um, the forces of domination, forces of exclusion, forces of infrastructure that just railroaded through it. But before it was the Black Wall Street, this was a place of confluence, of trading between tribes. The Tuscarora Nation was here, and the Eno is their river. The Occaneechi band of the Saponi, the Occaneechi band of the Saponi also would trade here in Durham. And though we understand that Orange County honors the lineage and the legacy of the Occaneechi band of the Saponi, and that there are, there's a replica of a village there, Durham doesn't really tell the story of the Tuscarora Nation, but the nature and the opportunities that ECWA and Eno River Association have is just profound, because there's all over this place the stories of people who are here, who continue to be here, and people who were here stewarding the land can be told through the natural environment. And so I'm going to pass it back to Donnie.
Yeah, man, thank you. You can go on to the next slide. Sorry about that. My second oldest wanted to say hello. It happens like that sometimes. Okay, so as Alexandra was touching on there, Tuscarora have some connections to the Eno River. When folks think about Eno River today, of course, Occaneechi come to mind, and the Eno itself comes to mind separately. But what folks really don't see is that historians and other colonial laypersons like John Lawson had documented Eno as one of the recorded Tuscarora towns of the 15 Tuscarora towns he visited, which those were not all of them. There are some records that there were as many as 24 large extended Tuscarora towns or extended enclaves of villages surrounding these waterways and river systems. And the Eno was one of them. So we have a clip here from Eno River Association on their social media where they are clarifying, Tuscarora occupation of the area. Some of that source material does come from the Tuscarora Nation of North Carolina. But we also have other historians themselves, besides Lawson, and more modern research the last maybe 50 or 60 years, since really the late 50s, early 60s, there's been a continued acknowledgement of Tuscarora occupation amongst the Eno River Valley. And artifacts that were found being Tuscarora, some Occaneechi as well. And just to touch back on what she was saying, there was a large Tuscarora trade hub in that region in the mid to late 1600s, leading up to the Tuscarora Wars. And there was a lot of proxy trading going on between the Tuscarora and the Occaneechi. And so the Tuscarora our ancestors would make wooden bowls, and they would trade those wooden bowls to Occaneechis for their furs, and those furs would be backpedaled to Virginia's colonial trade persons, and for rum, guns, ammunition, trade cloths, knives, hatchets, and all these different goods. And then in exchange, those goods would be traveled back to Occaneechi country by the Tuscarora. And so the large part of the Tuscarora monopolizing colonial trade goods during this latter part of the 16th century, earlier part of the 17th century, was a big motivation of the colonial displacement, the warfare, the breaking of the trade networks. The English really couldn't get to the interior and take advantage of seizing all of the wealth and extract all of the, sort of patronage from all of those goods in that system. And so a lot of times you'll hear about the Tuscarora monopolizing these trade routes amongst the Occaneechi Path in Caderas, which is our village in Raleigh that John Lederer from Virginia visited in 1669, 1670. So we know that Tuscarora had a large impact on trade through the region, and that between the 1660s to 70s to the Tuscarora War, you really get a slow breakdown of Tuscarora control over preventing and resisting the colonial economics of their trade goods.
Thank you, Donnie. And I just wanted to share that thank you, Eno River Association, for honoring this history. This post of yours I have reshared, and I have shared even on internal chats that I have with community members. We have so many channels throughout, so many channels of communication, especially with grassroots organizing, multiple different spaces where I've been able to share this screenshot, because one of the things that the community, especially the so-called immigrant community, we have been called by worse names than immigrant, but those terms really dissociate us from the land, and they don't tell the full story. And if you read here, there's one part that is very significant, and it says that the Tuscarora originally came from the southwestern United States and northwestern Mexico. So Mexico, we have a lot of people from Mexico who have been called all sorts of names. And when I tell them, you know what, our relatives are here. We have relatives here who have been stewarding this land for thousands of years, not hundreds, thousands. And it is important for our children to know this land welcomes you. The welcoming that the community has needed has come from indigenous peoples who acknowledge that we are relatives, who acknowledge that this land is a land that is not foreign to us. Our relatives know of this land. The corn speaks to it. You know, the archaeology speaks to it. The artifacts speak to it. That we have been collaborating, we have been bonding, collaborating, and thriving with our relatives. And the Tuscarora have been the huge part of this in terms of sense of belonging, in terms of opening doors for many other tribes, because we know that historically in North Carolina, slowly but surely more tribes are being recognized, more tribes are coming about. Some of them are descendants of the Tuscarora. If you look back in their history, some of them are descendants of the Tuscarora people. And now that we have boundaries, now that we have different labels, there's a whole history that we're not going to get into for this conversation. But it does a great service, especially for displaced relatives, to know that we share history, that we have all migrated across Turtle Island, and no one here should feel that they don't belong. No one here should feel that they are alien to this land, because this land speaks to our relationships and speaks to a wealth of bonding, bridging, and linking, and sustaining together. And so I'm going to pass it to uh, Donnie and Dwayne. Let me know if I should move to the next slide.
Yeah,
Okay, I'd like to add something really quickly before we move on at this juncture, and that is that in my slides and speech that I've prepared, um, at this point, I'll corroborate what Alexandra, the truth that she spoke about our people being related and our people, our Tuscarora people, being originally from the southwest and northwestern Mexico. And that's a map that I have that I will show when I show my presentation, my slides there. But yes, our corn is what actually proved that. That's one of the ways that I will speak to our history with the corn, and that is that when we had our Tuscarora white corn analyzed, now our oral tradition has always informed us that we are originally from that area of northwestern Mexico, Southern California area. And when we had our corn DNA analyzed, it corroborated that story, that that is where our corn came from, and we carried our corn with us across Turtle Island. So we are all related. We often say Wananihui. We are all related.
all right, perfect. Yeah, I'll wait for those additions. We can go ahead and move to the next one. And so many of you are probably familiar with the Durham and Red Wolves, the Museum of Life Science. They have been very crucially important to the captivity and release program. They're helping with the red wolves under the Endangered Species Act, which is promoting biological and ecological diversity. They're a keystone species. There's a disbalance in the coyote population versus the ancestral red wolf population, as well as some hybridization that's going on in some of their genetics, which in some cases is helpful in sustaining their longevity. There's been some concerns about not having enough genetic biological diversity in the red wolf stock of genetics to keep them going without intervention in this way. But the captivity program has been especially monumental for essentially stocking red wolves to be able to put back into the wild in this program across Tuscarora ancestral lands, which we share the land. So when I say Tuscarora ancestral land, the wolves, that's also their ancestral land as well, in large part, more so than Tuscarora. So there's going to be some room in the future, hopefully, to network with the Museum of Life Science and the Center of Biological Diversity. A lot of that is starting to take some focus on the wildlife crossings. I know that the design work was recently put in earlier in the year. There was some signing going on between the DOT and the U.S. Wildlife and Fish Service. With that being said, we've been asked to continue to participate in the Save the Red Wolves program with the Center of Biological Diversity, but potentially naming future pups as well. So we're very excited to be part of the program to help promote the red wolves and other endangered species across ancestral lands. It's going to help with more than just the red wolves. It's going to help with vehicular collision. It's going to help with car insurance that folks won't have to necessarily, hopefully if it goes right on that side of the industry, we can't really control, but in theory, these wildlife crossings can holistically help when it comes to safety on roads for both animals and our drivers, especially in that area of Dare County, Hyde County, and the Alligator River Preserve, where these red wolves, the Mingo pack, and the Pungo pack and the Milltail pack are attempting to take hold again. So we're very thankful that Durham is a hub for revitalization and restoration and reintroduction of the red wolves. Most folks aren't really seeing that connection, but in the long term, the work that is going on in Durham at that museum with these red wolves is fundamental to what we're doing in other conservation and ecological, biological diversity agencies, organizations, and movements. So very glad to be able to talk about those things.
And I wanted to share that we do have a collaboration with the Museum of Life and Science currently through the Boost program. And so we have been in touch with Andrea Tejada and the entire team. I'm not naming all the Museum of Life folks, but they are going to come to our Boost program this summer to talk about the red wolves and the Tuscarora efforts to name and give dignity to these relatives. Because in the Tuscarora cosmology, just like in the Mayan cosmology and in the Lenca cosmology, wolves, butterflies, all these wonderful beings are relatives, and we treat them with respect. And so naming is also one of the loving ways that Duane and Donnie with the Tuscarora Historical and Preservation Society actually give that welcoming, and also not that welcoming because this is their land, but more of that acknowledgement that they are crucial to balancing this ecosystem that used to have so many wolves before. And many of you have seen documentaries, maybe National Geographic and such, that talk about when you support the revitalization of wolves, when you support them, it helps with all kinds of things, including erosion. And they explain to you all the ways that the wolves contribute to healthy habitats. And so this is something that is very, very exciting for Durham to be a part of this and to make that connection with the original peoples of this land in terms of stewardship, in terms of honoring our relatives, the red wolves. I'm going to pass it to move it to the next slide.
Yeah, absolutely. Yahweh, Alexandra, for adding that. Definitely, wolves are our relatives. All animals in creation are our relatives. We are all related. And we all have roles and responsibilities and obligations. And the wolves' obligations is much like these next two animal relatives. The Ellaby Creek watershed is also an area that we're taking very unique interest. We know that there's been some funding and some continuity issues there for the ECWA, but they're continuing on, which is really good for what we're hoping to have happen in the future as far as collaborations. We know that there's the beaver marsh and the heron rookery in Ellaby Creek watershed. Both of those animals, as well as Quarine, which is wolf, is representative of Tuscarora family clans that we have in our culture. These are, again, they show our connection to the land, to how we've learned from our animal relatives over time, over the thousands of years that we've co-stewarded land and shared territory. It also shows how we've kept responsibilities and roles and accountability for certain jobs and necessities in our family. So beavers, of course, we see as in this picture, they're creating dam systems, which are helping with water retention. They're creating ecosystems where sometimes there is no water. They'll create hubs where it'll create a zone where there is hydration. They take care of, excuse me, maintaining certain levels of retention during storms, storm weather. And when you take those beavers out of the area, we see less and less retention of these storm systems. We see more damage. We see more flooding in coastal areas where these beavers are doing their natural processes of maintaining their own responsibilities and environmental engineering. Um, the heron is another gahe, which is part of Tuscarora family clans. The heron specifically is eating fish and eating other bugs and toads and lizards. So they're keeping certain animals that we consider pests in different. We use these different terms as pests, keeping them under control. So their sustainability. Um, and again, just ecological engineering and diversity. And so it's very special for us looking back as Tuscarora to see protections for and interest for securing the beaver marsh and the heron rookery as part of the Ellerby Creek watershed. To see that as part of our culture and see it still here in the state is very important to us in maintaining those protections, maintaining those areas so that they can continue to flourish and that we can continue to have ecological and biological diversity. So we're very thankful for what happens with those people that volunteer, those folks that work there, and those people who've continued to sacrifice over the decades of doing the good work to keep our relatives safe and in abundance.
Thank you, Donnie. And I just wanted to also shout out Ellerby Creek Watershed, who is also partnered with the Boost Science Program. Our students, our scholars, in past years have learned so much about, what does it take to maintain um, these natural habitats and the heron rookery, also the beaver marsh, as Donnie was mentioning. And I also wanted to say that in the walks throughout Durham, you will see again reminders of the stewardship of original peoples. When you look at, we talk about Durham being a place of tobacco, right? Tobacco is also important to the Tuscarora Nation as well. Sage, cedar is important to the Tuscarora Nation. Sassafras. I've actually spotted sassafras. And so I would love for the chat. I won't be able to see the chat right now, but I just want you all to participate with us. And anytime you hear something that you have seen in Durham, and beyond, because again we're making this connection about urban and rural connections. It's so important to how our peoples are, like Mayans had metropolitan areas that included anybody and everybody who wanted to be a part of that community. And so in that sense, we can establish that, urban and rural areas need to come together, need to be more connected. And so if you hear something, whether it's sassafras, dogbane, cypress, mullein, ash trees, these are all important trees to the Tuscarora Nation as well. There's so many more. But again, Durham tells a story of who was stewarding the land, and our conservation efforts as people who love the land is not to separate the human aspect from it. Conservation is a little different for people who know how to be in right relationship with the land. You don't have to remove the human element as long as there is respect and reciprocity embedded. Humans and the natural environment do get along. Conservation efforts don't have to exclude humans. And so I do know that that is a whole philosophical thing we're not going to get into, but this is showing the way, and Durham can tell those stories of the people who were stewarding and making sure that that reciprocity was happening throughout.
Yeah, for sure. You nailed that. That was perfect. That was perfect. Great segue into our specific conservation efforts. You yourself in mariposas and butterflies, and some of us in ganhagerat, corn. Folks do not see the human connection. As a lot of times when you're looking at insects and you're looking at crops that you might put out in the field and grow. It's not as simple as just putting the seed down and walking away. There were very specific processes that we followed, that we learned and were taught by our southern relatives through these processes of what to do with corn. How do we relate to corn? How do we get the best of corn from this process? And so our ancestors didn't just cut the corn, dry the corn, store the corn, and cook the corn. It was a little bit more complicated than that. What you see today is traditionally is a process very much mirrored from the mortar and pestle and the grinding of the corn, the liming and washing of the corn, the lying of the corn, as some say. to get the nixtamalization. So we, the Tuscarora, using our corn, we would wash it many times, dry it out, wash it many times, dry it out. And then there were many different ways that corn was utilized. So it wasn't just a one-shot deal. Corn wasn't just on the cob. Corn was massed, where you could make, Tuscarora tortillas. You can make Tuscarora breads. You can make Tuscarora cakes, both boiled and baked, that our folks made. As well as we see our corn, as this process is being used, open up its nutritional value, open up its protein uses, open up its different vitamins and nutrients that are locked away when you don't do this process with the corn. Again, this process is very ancient, rooted with fire, rooted with the land, rooted with the minerals and the grinding, and this longevity of process. So it wasn't just, again, one step. There were many steps to get the corn where we needed it. And of course, different butterflies and different animals, our animal relatives, especially the bug flying insects, were your pollinators. So many times, mariposas and bees and birds and other insects in the wind is pollinating the corn for us and helping do that part of the job. We traded corn. We know that corn was used by colonists and settlers, that when Colonel Barnwell attacked Tuscarora forts, that he took hundreds and thousands of bushels of Tuscarora corn from those fortifications that were attacked and destroyed. Not only displacing Tuscarora people, but then also removing that sustenance that we had grown and traded and learned how to use over time. And it fed the same soldiers that were killing and removing Tuscaroras from the region. So the corn, has this sort of twist of fate to it, where we see corn being grown and taken and sold up to New York when certain Tuscaroras leave the area. But we also see it embedded in local farmers markets, all in the newspapers, all in periodicals from the late 1700s, early 1800s, up and through the 19th century, up into the 20th century. You'll see Tuscarora corn in the markets being sold by the pound. So many Americans were eating a heirloom variety of Tuscarora corn, and just had no knowledge of it whatsoever. So Tuscarora corn has sustained many generations, many countries, many races and ethnic backgrounds of people, not just the Tuscarora themselves. And again, we got this knowledge from our Mayan and Lenca relatives from central and southern Turtle Island. So we're very thankful to have that. And if there's anything on Mariposas you wanted to share, Alexandra, before we move to the next slide, feel free.
I'll share something because I believe we have maybe 5 more minutes before we have to allow room for questions and also announcements, because I know this is a coalition space and there's so many offerings. Feel free to also share in the chat any offerings related to anything that we've shared about, because this is about collaboration. And so if you have any offerings related to mariposas, I'll just say with mariposas, it has been a part of the work that I do to share and bond with people. I have friends who, invite me to their gardens, and we also do organizing and we're out on the streets. And sometimes mariposas will show up even in our vigils and our walks. It's so profound. I'm going to pass it to Donnie for the next slide.
Can I say something first, please?
Yes, Dwayne.
Okay, I wanted to say at this point that in my presentation, I expect to speak about the corn, and not just about corn itself, but the way that an entire way of life of the Tuscaroras is shaped by the corn. From birth, marriage, death, ceremonies, states of being. There's all these ways that corn is a part of our lives and intimately woven into the fabric of our lives. So I'll say that. And Ganahagerad is specifically the Tuscarora white corn. There's many different kinds, but our Tuscarora white corn is specifically Ganahagerad. And incidentally, Alexandra, we have different names whenever we're growing up. Sidebar here. My niece I named Usnaruru when she was born, and that's Mariposa in Tuscarora.
That's so beautiful. Thank you, Dwayne. I will say that we are currently doing workshops 1 hour. I mean, we have 40, we're almost at time now. So for this presentation, but we do have upcoming with the state library. And I know Scott is here. Astrid, thank you so much for that connection. And Megan, who's also here, we are looking into something related with trees of the triangle. And so there will be more opportunities for collaboration where we can kind of get into some of these, the importance of trees, but also the importance of corn. And there's so much that we can talk about. We need a whole like workshop, a whole Tuscarora workshop. And so if anybody wants to envision that with us, reach out to us. But we are at time, and so I want to be able to like give a little bit of this preview of this presentation that is offered to librarians. So schools and libraries, organizations that want to be a part of, I want to hear a little bit more about how we are integrating spirit, people, and land as a framework that is indigenous, but that also increases bonding and collaborations. We want to welcome you into this. There is a flyer that is available on Communidad de Durham and also in the Tuscarora Historical and Preservation Society pages, social media pages, website, and you can register for that. This is very important for anybody who's in library services who wants to increase collaboration and bonding in a way that honors, identity, connection, belonging, transformation, collaboration, community building, healing and wellness, restoring peace, sustainability, diversity, stewardship, and balance. So anybody who cares about that and wants to be able to make those connections with families, with students, with educators, and how we can all find our place, our sense of belonging through nature, but also through people, but also through our own identities that are so important in this because we're all a community, and there's room for all of us here. And so I just wanted to make sure that you signed up or heard about this presentation that we will do on the 22nd with the State Library of NC. And so I guess for the last maybe 2 minutes, Don, do we have maybe 2, 3 minutes to kind of talk about some collaborations because there are some people here that I wanted to shout out. And
I think that would be fine.
wonderful. Thank you so
I
much,
think
Don.
that if
Mhm.
folks do have events that they want to share or upcoming things, maybe they could put them in the chat.
That would be amazing. Yes, please use the chat to share your events, and that way we're all aware of all the happenings that are happening in this wonderful state of North Carolina and community. So I want to shout out. So Megan Pendel, I can't see you in the chat because I mean I'm sharing the screen. I just want to shout you out in this space because your work on community hubs speaks so much about some of the work that we're doing with Spirit People Land and your invitations to us. To bond the way you approached us. It's just been incredible for me. I'm so glad to find more collaborations in the space that honor, relationships above above progress, right? It's like we move at the speed of trust. We're kind of moving and there's room for all of us to learn about each other and sometimes learn about what are some things that are it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to not know how to relate to one another. I mean, this is part of relating. Just don't give up. Don't give up. Let's continue to work on things that we care about. Let's continue to collaborate. And so I do know that the Durham County Sustainability Office was really helpful to us. I was reaching out about murals that where myself and other Honduran women, we were talking about the importance of butterflies in our cosmology and in our traditions and culture. And Durham Tech, we were able to help co-design. It's not unveiled yet. You can't see the mural yet, but there are some artists that are working on a mural, and we reached out to Megan Pendel, and she immediately put the word out everywhere. And not only that, but also has invited us to continue dreaming about what more collaborations we could do, especially for Earth Day. We'd love to be able to draw butterflies behind my alma mater, Hillside High School. There is an American Tobacco ATC trail, and so if you have some chalk, we're trying to keep it environmentally friendly, but chalk is the best we can do right now. To just put some messages about Earth Day that kind of speak to bonding, to collaborations, to the ways that we all belong through, butterflies, wolves, and corn, and all the loving things. So if you know how to draw, just come out on the 22nd, right behind Hillside High School, on the ATC trail that is directly behind the school. We want to be able to put so many designs and wonderful things, and definitely honor the Tuscarora lineage and the ways that they have shown us how to take care of the land and continue to do that because they are still here, very much here, helping us with conservation efforts that are rooted in reciprocity. I also wanted to shout out Astrid from the last conversation. Astrid reached out and asked a little bit more about the work that Comunidad de Durham was doing and where we have our events. And I was mentioning some events are public and some of them are not. We do circles, talking circles. We host circles. Those are very sensitive spaces that we do with community and trying to navigate the current climate that has not been welcoming for people. I would say, especially for our people. And we have many offerings, but yet there was a connection that she made with Scott, who is with the State of Library NC. And Scott, it has been just an honor to learn from you, to bond and collaborate. So definitely reciprocity, relationship, caring about one another, understanding like what are some of those things that have caused pain to us, even in the work that we do, and what are some ways that we can be sensitive about those things and move forward in a way that honors wellness and honors integrity of the person, right? What are some of those things and how do we move together? So I have really, really appreciated that. And Boost also through the Boost program, the Boost Science program, we are always looking for presenters. So if you want to come and present, many of you have already done so, and the invitation is always open. If you want to come in this season, we are actually right now signing up presenters for our summer immersion, which is July 27th through 29th, and also in August. And so I just wanted to thank you all so much for all the collaborations, partnerships, and please, please, please check out the TuscaroraNationNC.com page. Check out the TuscaroraSun.org page. Check out the Facebook page, the social media. You will learn a little bit more about ourselves and our organizing and the ways we go about it and the ways we kind of speak truth to power when it needs to, but also the ways we kind of ease into the softness of just enjoying broadening our relatives, the people that we can call relatives in this land, and understanding that we are very much supported even by the butterflies, by the wolves, by the corn, by the trees, by the wind, by the four directions, by the medicine wheel, by everything that allows us to be a part of the whole. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra. That's great.
Thank you so much, Alexandra. That was awesome, all three of you.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions or other like last minute comments about the presentation?
Oh, I will share that if anyone wants any relevant source material on the Tuscarora and specific documentation on what we discussed here, more than happy to share that as far as resources go, digital resources, literacy, things that we spoke on, because some folks will hear certain facts that we share and sometimes want to see a source, sometimes don't. But to whoever and to everyone who wants anything of that nature, we have a couple different collections of information put together that we can on notice send over for folks that want to review that for themselves and take a deep dive. For those who want to do their own investigation of sorts, we always try to provide the path and the facts, but also we like folks to do their own digging and verify, the things that we're saying to them so that they can get a better understanding holistically of our place and time as Tuscaroras, as original peoples of the land. So Yahweh, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thank you.
Yes, and also thank you, Shirley. I didn't get to talk about the work that you have been doing with Comunidad de Durham in terms of circles, in terms of opening up spaces, including the LAC. So you have actually allowed us to do circles at the LAC in the years past and continue to be a strong supporter of Comunidad de Durham. And also Shirley is offering Mindfulness Thursdays, and that has been such a benefit to our community. We're going to be opening it up a little bit more, so you will see that we will be posting opportunities for us to all take a breath together. So thank you, Shirley. If you want to share anything in the chat, feel free to do so.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you so much again, all of you, for your time and for sharing your information with us. That was really awesome.
Thank you.
I live in Wake County, so I might try to go to that the library event.
Okay.
Oh, it's virtual, so you can
Oh, it's
just sign
virtual.
up and
Oh, perfect.
anyone can attend. It'll be virtual.
We've done quite a few in the past in person, and we still have some potential and opportunity to come and do some in person after our virtual series. So you may end up seeing us in Wake County there after a little further in the fall, maybe winter season. We'll see.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. And thank you to everyone here for being here as well.
Yeah. Watkanaharates, greetings and thanks. Actually, Watkanaharates literally means, we often say just greetings, but literally what it means is like we're giving you our greetings, thanks, respect, even love in certain situations, Watkanaharates.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.